Good evening, this is BBC Newsline. I'm Lindsay Telford. The headlines. A major review says 8 women whose smear tests were misread went on to develop cancer.
This has been an absolute scandal from start to finish. The impact that this has had on individuals, on people's lives, on families, words can't describe it.
Police investigating a sex assault allegation on an Armagh GAA trip to the United States arrest a man. A report says there was earnest endeavour made to bring the Le Mans bombers to justice, but the families feel robbed.
Nobody has been found guilty of the murder of my parents and the other 10 people who perished that night and of causing the injury to so many.
The police say 58 officers have been injured in rammings this year. And nurses who began their careers over 60 years ago are honoured for their contributions.
And the chilly but largely dry weather will continue for another few days. Changes are coming our way this weekend. I'll have more later.
It's Wednesday, the 11th of December. Welcome to BBC Newsline. We'll start tonight's programme with what's been described as an absolute scandal. A report into cancer screening at the Southern Health Trust has found that many women were failed after some screeners underperformed and went unchecked by management for years. 2 women died. One member of staff is currently suspended with conditions placed on a second screener following a review by their governing body, which highlighted persistent failures. Campaigners say it underlines the need for a public inquiry, a decision now at the door of the Health Minister. Well, let's have a closer look at the consequences of the failures. Some 17,500 women were offered rechecks over a 13-year period. 8 women developed cancer after their initial smear was misread, and 11 women were discovered to have precancerous cells and they received treatment. The Southern Trust has apologised to all those women who have been affected. Well, our health correspondent Mary-Louise Connolly has been following this story for us, and she has this report.
Just some of the thousands of women who have been affected by the cervical smear scandal at the Southern Trust, which was triggered by mistakes in a laboratory, which went unchecked by management for years. One of the women says she's lost trust in the system.
This has been an absolute scandal from start to finish. The impact that this has had on individuals, on people's lives, on families, words can't describe it.
The review, which spanned 13 years, looked at 2 different groups. The first at the cases of 207 women who had previously been diagnosed with cervical cancer. 8 of those whose slides were misread went on to develop cancer. Lindsay Courtney and Erin Harbinson have died. The second group included 17,425 women who were told their previous smears were being rechecked. 11 of those were found to have precancerous changes in cells. They're now undergoing non-cancerous treatment and are being closely monitored. While a vast majority of the women recalled were clear, others weren't. I put it to the medical director, had the Trust's approach been somewhat blasé.
No, we are deeply thinking about these women and we've taken particular care to be sensitive to those women who have had changed results and looking at particularly spending support for them and to make sure that they're appropriately followed up. It's really foremost in our minds to think about those women.
BBC News NI began this investigation in 2022 when this woman told us her smear tests were misread. A whistleblower provided information which revealed screeners had been underperforming for years. We can now report one screener has been suspended while conditions of practice have been placed on another.
Any cancer diagnosis is devastating for the individual and their families. If you then go on and find out that there might have been an opportunity to diagnose that earlier, of course that's awful for the individual, awful for the families. The laboratory in the Southern Trust no longer undertakes cervical screening. All these issues...
Is that because they can't be trusted?
We have totally changed how the screening programme works and have introduced a much better HPV test. That test and the screening programme is now delivered through only one laboratory. It is much easier going forward to make sure that one laboratory where all the expertise is concentrated in one place.
For some women, getting answers to their own personal cases has been a challenge as they've had to take on the system. This independent expert who carried out the cervical smear inquiry in the Republic says Northern Ireland needs its own.
There are similarities. Both of the scandals were about cervical screening, and screening is a difficult thing to get right, and that's why you need the expertise and you need it to be well managed, and that it wasn't well managed in the south, and it doesn't look to me as if it has been well managed in the north at all. And I think that is more than reason to have an inquiry in the interests of the women of Northern Ireland and to ensure that women's health gets the attention it deserves.
The Trust is marking its own homework. There really needs to be a statutory public inquiry into how this happened, how it was allowed to continue, and that it can never happen again. I mean, you have two families, the Courtneys and the Harbinson, who are facing Christmas without two ladies that should be there. It is scandalous.
Cervical screening is offered to women aged between 25 and 64. And as with all screening, it doesn't detect cancer, but can help prevent it. The Southern Trust's review was a bonus for this 80-year-old.
I'm one of the very fortunate ones. And as I say, I got a bonus of another test, which I wasn't entitled to.
Despite all that's happened, women are encouraged to take up their cervical screening appointment.
Well, so many questions raised there, and Mary-Louise is with me now. Mary-Louise, this must have been an extremely difficult couple of years for those involved.
Yeah, I think for the past year it's felt like a very dark, heavy cloud has been hanging over all of those impacted by this story. And ahead of today's publication, there's been a great deal of nervousness, and as one woman said to me, that nervousness was justified, as what has emerged today is worse than what was expected. There remains many unanswered questions, and perhaps one of the most important questions, should there be a public inquiry? Cervical screening is complicated. It doesn't guarantee that results are 100% accurate. That's by its very nature. But what is certain is that screeners underperformed. Management didn't do anything to intervene for many, many years, and a public inquiry might be able to dig down into finding out those answers. Why not? Who was responsible? And have mistakes been, have people corrected those mistakes and have done something to rectify them?
And Mary-Louise, at a time like this, surely leadership is more important than ever.
It is, and the Health Minister, Mike Nesbitt, is across this. He has appointed an independent assessor from Scotland to come in to look at today's reports, and based on their findings, he will announce if there should be an inquiry. Lindsay, public inquiries, they're expensive. They don't always yield answers. I think if this matter had been treated differently from the very start, perhaps with greater clarity and empathy, it may not have provoked the reaction that's now followed.
Mary-Louise Connolly, thank you so much. Still to come on the programme, the Education Minister said he's frustrated by the poor condition of some school buildings. Now the police say they've arrested a 30-year-old man on suspicion of sexual assault and released him on bail pending further inquiries. It's understood the arrest is in connection with an alleged incident while the Armagh Gaelic football squad was on a recent trip to the United States. For the background to this story, I'm joined from the newsroom by our reporter, Ida Dungan. Ida, what more can you tell us?
This assault is alleged to have taken place in November last month when a group of around 100 people travelled to Miami in Florida to celebrate the All-Ireland Armagh Senior Gaelic hurling success back in July. Now, it's understood around 30 players, the management team, some family members and some senior figures from the Armagh County Board travelled on that trip. Now today, a statement was released from Patrick Higgins from Donnelly and Wall Solicitors. In it, Mr Higgins stated that his client had voluntarily presented himself to the PSNI yesterday to be interviewed. It went on to say that his client had fully cooperated with the PSNI in the initial stages of this investigation, and finally adding that his client was innocent of all the charges and vowed to do everything in his power to clear his name. Now, the PSNI have subsequently released their own statement saying that a 30-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of sexual assault and causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent. The man has since been released on police bail pending further inquiries. Now, a call has been put into Armagh GAA and the GAA in general, but we haven't yet got a response.
Ida, thank you. Let's go back now to February 1978. 400 people went to a dance hall at Le Mans Hotel, just outside Belfast. It was an Irish Collie Club event. But what started as a night of celebration turned into horror. An IRA firebomb attack. It killed 12 people, including 3 married couples, and injured many more. One of the most horrific attacks of the Troubles. Well, the Police Ombudsman of Northern Ireland has been looking into the RUC's investigation at the time. Today, it found there was an earnest endeavour to bring those responsible to justice. Our crime and justice correspondent Julian O'Neill has this.
The IRA turned the Le Mans Hotel into a furnace, strapping cans of petrol to its bomb, burning alive those in the path of a 40-foot fireball.
Well, just a short time ago, there were 400, 500 people crammed inside this building, one of the few night spots left around the Belfast area, having an evening out. Then suddenly, the bomb went off.
The device was placed on the outside windowsill of a function suite where members of a dog club were attending a dinner dance. The 12 dead included 3 married couples.
100 detectives have been assigned to the incident, and that's the largest force put together to investigate any single crime since the Troubles started. The police have already taken the unprecedented step of distributing thousands of handbills designed to shock anyone who knows anything about the incident into coming forward.
Today, 46 years later, bereaved families and survivors were told there had been an earnest endeavour to bring those responsible to justice. A report found no evidence suspects had been protected because they might have been informants. A conclusion reached despite the unexplained disappearance of interview notes with many suspects.
Clearly, in many instances, we could not examine the interview records, what was actually said during interviews, but we have also viewed this from an intelligence perspective and indeed other perspectives, and on that basis we're satisfied that no individual was protected from the investigation.
Some investigative leads were not followed up, including efforts to trace the bomber's getaway car. One person was jailed for manslaughter 3 years later, but the Le Mans families feel robbed of justice.
The confidence in the full investigation has obviously been really challenging for the families, because nobody has been found guilty of the murder of my parents and the other 10 people who perished that night, and of causing the injury to so many.
The IRA had used firebombs on commercial targets for a year before Le Mans, but this was an attack with consequences like no other, and one in which the warning call was received just 9 minutes before the explosion.
Well, Julian is with us now. Julian, you've been talking to the families of the victims. Is this the final chapter as far as they're concerned?
For the families, no, it's not the end of the road. They now intend to go to Sir Declan Morgan's new Legacy Commission and ask for a new investigation. They want access to intelligence information, and they want to know who all was involved, including who sanctioned Le Mans, if that is indeed possible. Now, a piece of evidence still exists which might be able to help. A fragment of adhesive tape has been recovered and remains in the possession of the police. This was recovered from the bomb. The Ombudsman's office says that given advances in forensic technologies in the last decade, further analysis of this exhibit may provide DNA opportunities.
Gillian O'Neill, thank you. Coming up between now and 7, we'll be catching up with the Altnagelvin nurses of the class of 1959 as they're honoured for their contribution to the NHS. A woman in her 20s who was the chief suspect in the murder of the 8-year-old Dundalk boy, Kieran Durnan, has been released without charge. Our reporter Aoife Moore is in Drogheda, and a short time ago she gave us this update.
The woman returned to Ireland by ferry yesterday when she was arrested by Gardaí. She was taken to a station in the east of the country and was questioned for 24 hours before being released this afternoon at around 4:30. The last confirmed sighting of Kieran was at his primary school in Dundalk in May 2022. In October, Gardaí launched a murder investigation saying that Kieran was missing, presumed dead. Now they say Gardaí inquiries are continuing. Aoife Moore, BBC Newsline, Drogheda.
2 former sub-postmasters from Northern Ireland who were caught up in the Horizon IT scandal are each to receive £200,000 in compensation under the Horizon Convictions Redress Scheme. More than 900 sub-postmasters were prosecuted for stealing because of incorrect information from the Horizon computer system. The man and woman have not been identified, but both had their convictions quashed by the government earlier this year. A lawyer acting on behalf of the woman said she was due to receive a further £400,000 in compensation under the scheme. Now, there have been 40 ramming incidents involving police vehicles in the last year. The PSNI said 58 officers were injured when their cars were deliberately hit by other vehicles as people attempt to evade police. Police say the numbers have remained similar year on year, as Eve Rosado reports.
This is just one of 40 vehicles damaged this year in rammings. These incidents happen all over Northern Ireland, but police say border and certain urban areas in Belfast and Derry are the most likely.
In part, it can be attributed to the fact that we have a land border, because in certain areas of Northern Ireland, criminals will seek to ram police vehicles in order to make effective their escape over that border. And that really underlines not just the risk that officers face, but also the need that we have for really close cooperation with our partners in An Garda Síochána.
How do these numbers compare to previous years?
So they're broadly consistent. This has been a problem that we've faced regularly now for a number of years, where people will use vehicles as weapons against the police, quite often in an attempt to try and evade their arrest and detection.
Behind every vehicle that's damaged, like this one, is an officer who has to deal with the mental and physical consequences of being attacked in this way.
I think the issue in dealing with it is most of them are wanting to make sure they come back to work as quickly as they can, and they actually feel a bit guilty at times when they have to be sitting at home because they've got broken bones or they've concussions or other injuries, and they want to alleviate that stress that their colleagues are facing, because with the reducing resources as police officers, we can't have people not being at work. It causes an issue, but ultimately the trauma that's caused by as a result of being involved in accidents does take time to heal, and again that's why they need as much support as they can.
The PSNI believes the numbers of injured officers could be higher than 58 due to some not reporting, and they say the cost of repairing these vehicles over the past 5 years is over £400,000. Eve Rosado, BBC Newsline.
Several families have been able to return to their homes following a security alert in County Londonderry. A number of properties were evacuated as a precautionary measure after a suspicious device was discovered on the Rannigan Road in Mackeraw yesterday. The security alert has now ended, but police say officers remain at the scene and inquiries are continuing. We've had reports on this programme before about the poor state of some of our school buildings. We've heard about damp and mould and even mouse infestations. Well, today the Education Minister said he's frustrated by the condition of some of these buildings. Paul Given was speaking on a visit to St Mary's Grammar in West Belfast, where he received letters from over 1,000 pupils who were asking for new sports facilities. Our education correspondent Robbie Meredith was there.
I'm going to whack it. 1, 2, 3.
Paul Given getting in the swing of hurling today at St Mary's Christian Brothers Grammar for Boys in West Belfast.
It's not the first time I've tried it, and maybe you could say I was able to hit it occasionally, and then it got better. In fact, I was better than some of the boys that have played for years.
They might dispute that, though the Minister's basketball shooting was spot on. But it was the state of the school's sports hall that was the serious purpose of the visit. When you take a walk around, you can see just how outdated some of the sports facilities are. There are 1,200 pupils here at St Mary's, but the sports facilities they use are over half a century old. Earlier, Paul Given was presented with letters from over 1,000 pupils appealing for him to change that.
It dates back to the 70s, some of these buildings, and it just doesn't work for us. And I think we're being held back, and compared to other schools, we don't have the facilities that they do.
It's frustrating because you see great talent in the school and people that have the potential, but it's sometimes annoying to see facilities in other schools when it isn't really here.
St Mary's is not alone. A recent report by Northern Ireland's Audit Office said many schools need better repairs and better buildings.
I'm deeply frustrated, and many principals, share their frustration with me that they're in school buildings that are not fit for purpose. And the Northern Ireland Audit Office report recently published said that there's hundreds of millions of pounds needed to be invested into our school estate.
St Mary's and many other schools hope that's investment Stormont can find. Robbie Meredith, BBC Newsline.
Well, something to inspire you now. The first group of nurses who began their careers in Altnagelvin Hospital when it opened its doors more than 60 years ago have been honoured for their contribution to the NHS. The class of 1959 were described as an inspiration to all who followed in their footsteps. Here's our Northwest reporter, Kieran Turish.
The annual Nursing Awards ceremony at Magee took on special significance when the class of 1959 were honoured. 14 nurses who began their career together. Many have maintained a friendship ever since.
Oh, it was just mesmerising. All new, everything, new building, new hospital. Just great times.
The nurses moved into the new Altnagelvin Hospital when it first opened in February 1960. It brought many challenges, but they loved every minute of it.
When it came to exam times, we helped each other and sat down. If somebody was having a problem, we were able to help each other. So that has lasted, and we all keep in touch still.
Frank Ekstrom was in the American Navy and stationed here. He met his future wife in a local chippy. Since nurses weren't well paid, he bought Yolanda, seen here in the middle, and all her colleagues a fish supper, including her then boyfriend. But they later dated and got married. Sadly, she passed away in 2019.
Very emotional. My eyes got wet many a times today. And seeing all the girls too, and their husbands.
But lovely to hear all those tributes.
It is. They deserved it. Very much deserved it. It's like the Derry girls reunited 60 years later. They are an amazing group.
The pioneering nurses were praised as the class of 2024 looked on.
It was a unique opportunity for them to see that group of nurses who trained all those years ago, who were still in touch with each other, who still exemplify empathy, kindness and understanding. I think it sets a real good example, and I think the people in the room today were absolutely privileged to be here.
The class of 1959 have been praised for their hard work, dedication and professionalism. And they've been described as an inspiration for all who followed in their footsteps. Kieran Turish, BBC Newsline, Derry.
Lovely stuff. Well, it's been another crisp and dry day, a welcome change from the wild weather of the weekend, and someone was clearly enjoying himself. Can we expect it to continue over the next few days? Cecilia, how's it looking?
Well, there's not a lot changing in the short term, Lindsay. So rare to see a red squirrel as well. I had a conversation there with Julian O'Neill before I came in. He reckoned it wasn't real, but red squirrels do exist in Northern Ireland. They like their hazelnuts and they like our forests clearly. And who doesn't like a wee stash of treats, especially coming up to Christmas? We all need something to reach for when it is quite chilly, because this chilly weather is set to continue. Now, we didn't have a lot of brightness today, but as Lindsay said, it was dry and it still looks, you know, nice enough. It's not kind of offensive weather for getting out for a walk, as long as you've got the right clothes on and you wrap up warmly. What is nice at this time of year is all the Christmas lights to cheer us up. The candy canes here in Castle Gardens in Lisburn looking really fab. So we've got these Christmas lights to cheer us up in the very short days of December. It is going to be a dry night, lots of cloud around, and what that means is any frost tonight will be very limited. But because the air is chilly, we only need a few breaks in the cloud, and they're more likely to be across parts of the north and west for temperatures to just dip down to freezing, but staying relatively mild and frost-free across Belfast and much of County Down. So any frost tomorrow morning, very isolated, any fog, very isolated, and for most it will be a straightforward commute through the morning. And there'll be lots of dry weather to come tomorrow again, very similar today, lots of cloud around, a bit grey in places. I wouldn't rule out a few blinks of blue sky, especially again up towards the northwest. Now, some places temperatures again a little below average, closer to normal though over Belfast and County Down. Tomorrow night, again, there's going to be a lot of cloud around, so once again, any frost will be extremely localised. The dry story continues for most, although you'll notice a couple of little showers there rolling up the Irish Sea. They may just hit parts of the County Down coast where it will, of course, stay frost-free. On Friday, it still looks pretty dry for most of the island, but there will be perhaps 1 or 2 showers near the east coast, and we've a weak weather front coming in from the northwest late in the day, but there'll be hints of brightness around. As that weather front moves through on Friday night, it brings brighter skies in for Saturday. Still the chilly air there on Saturday, but look at this coming in from the Atlantic on Sunday. Milder air's moving in, the wind's picking up as well, and that milder air is set to stay into the beginning of next week, but not a lot of rain around. The high pressure there meaning that most of the rain stays up towards the northwest of Scotland. So little bits of rain in the forecast over the next 5 days, but not much. It will, however, turn noticeably milder by Sunday.
Not bad, Cecilia. That's it for now. Our late news is at 10:30. Have a very nice evening.